Today is the day. It's the day that I'm going to start working on my giant oyster collage. Now, I've been talking about this for about a year now, and today is the first day that I've been able to start, and I'm sharing it with you. I'm going to go over how I set it up, the supplies that I'm using for the background, and I'm going to show you some techniques that I've not shared before. I'm Jackie Bernardi, and welcome to my studio. All right, I'm getting started with just some basic supplies I'm going to share with you here. I've got a roller tray and a roller because there's a lot of space to go over. I've got some white gesso here. This is gesso from Nova Paints that you can now get on Blick, which I'm so excited about. Got a tape measure, a pencil, some brushes. I've got a pair of shears. And this handy dandy laser level. Now, you don't need a laser level, I just have one, but I do want to make sure that from the beginning that everything is pretty level in terms of the final output of the collage. And this here is my staple gun, and the staple gun is really important when working this large on a wall. I've already put the canvas up on my big giant workspace wall. What I'm going to do now is I kind of want to get a loose measurement of the outside edges of this collage. Now, it's really important that you leave room for the edges of your painting to wrap around whatever substrate it's going to go onto. So since I don't know what I am going to do with this painting, meaning I don't know if I'm going to keep it for myself or if I'm going to sell it, I'm choosing to create this non-stretched, meaning not on a frame, so that if I do sell it, I can roll it up and ship it at far less expense than if I were to have to crate this giant collage. So I'm just putting a rough outline of where I think the edging of the actual painting and collage is going to be. And then I'm going to want to go over that edge when I'm putting down my initial layers of background by 2 or 3 inches on each side. So that way I know it can be wrapped around and that there will be paint that goes all the way around the wrap. I hope that makes sense. You'll see as I start painting that I go out probably even further than that. I just want to be really careful. Now, I'm going to do this exercise again later on because once the background goes on, then I'm going to want to create an edging to where I can collage to and not beyond. And the reason for that is that if you build up the edges too large with compounds or with collage, you risk having it crack when the framer stretches it over the substrate. We'll get to that later. I just wanted to bring it up now. All right, so now that I have this loosely framed out, I'm going to go ahead and start gessoing the canvas. The canvas that I'm using is Cotton Duck. It's 10-pound and 15-ounce canvas, and it's unprimed. So I definitely want to get a couple layers of gesso down here so that, one, my paints don't soak through the canvas and attach to the wall canvas behind it. It's not terrible if that happens, but I really don't want to do that. I want to create a primer layer between the actual fabric of the canvas and my paints. So I just put it in this tray, and again, I'm using the paint tray because everything is larger and I want to move pretty quickly with the gesso. So I put it on the paint tray. I'm going to frame out with the brush quite a bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and roll the primer onto the canvas. Now again, I'm following these lines, that the loose framework of the ultimate collage. And the measurement is approximately, at this point, is approximately 6 foot by 4.5 feet. I want to give myself some flexibility here, right? Because today I'm just creating the background. But when I really start working on the oyster will be largely centered on this canvas, but the scale has to make sense. So I know the height is 6 feet, but the width of this oyster might extend to 4 feet, and then that would be too close to wrap around the frame with the collage. So I want to make sure that there's plenty of room. So I actually end up going well over the lines, even with the gesso, just because visually I want to give myself options once I start sketching out the oyster. Now, when you're working large, there are a lot of things to consider that we just simply don't think about when we're working smaller. And so one of those is the edges, right? Because it is important. Another thing, though, is making sure that when we're putting gesso down, especially on a very large canvas like this, that we are going in all directions. We want the paint to pull the canvas, because it will pull the canvas as it dries, in every direction, and really make sure that that gesso settles into all the fibers. I'm not going to try to do this in one coat, and in fact right now what I'm doing is I'm taking the gesso that's left in this container. It's a little more than half gone, right? And I just poured in some black gesso, and I'm going to make a gray gesso here. I'm making this just to ensure that all of the canvas has gesso on it. Now, if I went over with another layer of white gesso, I wouldn't be able to tell, right? As it dried, I wouldn't be able to tell if there was gesso on every single fiber of this canvas. But by making the gesso gray, by just putting in another gesso, I could have tinted it with paint. It would have been fine, a colored paint, but I did have some black gesso. I created this gray. Now, I'm not using the gray like a lot of people use gray. They would like to have a nice neutral background. That's not concerning me at all, because I'm going to have so many layers of background that the gray won't make a difference really at all. I'm just doing it to ensure that every fiber has gesso on it. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to do exactly what I did before, and that is to brush out the edges with the gray, and then to go ahead with the roller and roll it out in every direction so that as it dries, it all adjusts properly. Now, the drying time, I should tell you, and I didn't before. When I put the first coat of gesso on, I let it dry for about 2 hours before I put this gray coat on. And this gray coat, I'm going to let dry overnight so that I'm certain before I start painting background that everything's covered, that it's completely dry, and also to see if I needed to put on another layer of gesso. I don't think I'm going to need to, especially since I know what I'm going to be doing with this canvas, which is putting many, many, many layers of background paint on and then collaging on top of that. So I'm not really worried about gesso not being perfectly covered, but it does need to be there. Right? And now I'm just going to start using some of these tools. I'm going to use the brayer to move some paint around. This here is the Blick Fluid Acrylic in Titan Buff. Love this as a really, really warm white. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it on top of the gesso straight out of the bottle. I'm not mixing it with anything. I'm just going to get it onto the canvas. And the fact that this is the very first layer of background, I'm not going to be very careful about how I roll it out or what it looks like, although I do think it starts to look pretty cool. I just want to get it on there. It's just the very first layer. You've seen me work in my art journal and on other pieces, and typically the very first thing I do after I tape off the edges is I go in with some charcoal and I make squiggles or I make marks on it. And that's really just to activate the surface of the whatever substrate I'm working on. This layer of Titan buff that is going on to, actually it's called unbleached buff is what Blick calls it. But I'm using this color, it's just going down to create a sense of texture, and it's just activating the surface. Really, we may not see any of this color in the background as we move on. It's just getting started. I'll tell you, it's a great exercise going up and down the ladder. I mean, it was a great workout for my legs while I was doing this. Up, down, up, down, up, down. I have forwarded through some of this in the video just because watching me roll out paint probably is not that fun, but I do want to show you the technique and how I'm not worried about the placement of this paint. I'm just literally squeezing it out of the bottle and onto the canvas. It is making some interesting drips down on the canvas that I have on the floor, which, who knows, maybe I'll use that in something someday. Very unplanned for consequence, but I like it. Now this here is a even more fluid acrylic. This is Golden's High Flow, and this is the light phthalo blue. When I put the canvas on the wall that I am painting on, right, that level of canvas, I stapled all the way across the top, right up by the crown molding up there. And then I stapled about a third of the way down. That was just to create some shape. It is not stapled all the way down yet, and that's why I was able to pull it away from the wall. I wanted to wait to staple the whole thing until the layers of gesso had fully dried. And the reason for that is unless you put a staple on every square inch of the surround, there is going to be some buckling. And so I wanted the buckling to happen because it was going to happen anyway, and then re-stretch that and staple it before I really start painting. Now, in my zeal to start painting background, I didn't staple the bottom. So right now it's still only stapled 1/3 of the way down on both sides and all the way across the top. I will go back in, stretch it, and staple it, and that's just fine. I'm not worried about it. Not the best practice necessarily, but it's going to be fine, right? And if I get into trouble, you know that I'll figure out a way to get out of trouble. Okay, now I'm coming in with some Payne's Gray. So I've got the light phthalo blue, I've got the unbleached titanium buff, and I have Payne's Gray. And these are the colors that I'm going to work with today because I'm choosing to work wet. So I have my spray bottle of water just in my hand. And as I apply the paint with the silicone paint shaper, I'm just moving it around. I just want fields of color. This is really all I'm doing at the moment is fields of color. And the paint is feeling pretty stiff. Actually, this container of Payne's Gray that I pulled this from is maybe 1.5 years old now, and the cap has not been on it well, so it's actually kind of thickened. And so I thought I'd bring out the spray bottle to loosen it up a little. But I think you all know I love to work wet. So as I started spraying, some dripping started to happen on the canvas. You can see it right there over on the left. And I loved it. As a general rule, if you get a really big emotional response from yourself, from something that you're doing when you're creating, make note of it, because that is your body telling you that that is meant to be part of whatever piece you're working on. So I paid attention to the fact that I was getting so excited by the way these drips were happening, the way the colors were melding, that I went all in. And it's making me extremely happy. Now, I could have used the roller here to roll on these colors, and I also could have created like big color fields that way. But there's something sort of haunting about the dripping and the dripping through the colors. And I don't know how much of this we'll actually see in the final painting, but that we have it on the wall at all is, I know it's there and I know how I made that happen. So if it does get covered up and I want to bring it back later, I know how. And what you see me doing here with the paint shaper is the paint shaper actually fell into the Payne's Gray in the paint pan, and I had paint all over it. So I just sprayed the paint shaper, got it really, really wet with the water. And what you're seeing me do is flicking the paint now onto the canvas. And I got to tell you, I was so nervous about that because there's cameras around. I thought I was going to get this paint everywhere. I managed to keep it on the canvas, which super happy about, and on the floor a little, but you know, what are you going to do? But look at this. Look at how it's running down and it's creating texture from a surface that really doesn't have very much texture. And I like that. And I also think it's a great starting place for color for the background of the ultimate painting here in Collage. I am not yet certain if I am going to upload every video that I make of the making of this oyster. I mean, it's going to take months to create this, and I'm not going to do this every single week. I mean, the way my process works is I need time, right? I need to sit back and take a look at what I have there and let the decisions for what needs to happen next come up. So I don't know that I'm going to post all of it, but when I do post it, it's not what I hope you'll get out of it. It's new techniques. So the spraying of the paint off of the silicone paint shaper onto the canvas and moving it around that way, that's a technique that you can experiment with in your own practice that you may not have thought of before. Oh God, I'm really, really excited about what's happening here. And the truth is when I work smaller, I very rarely use drips in my paintings, and now I'm wondering why, right? So this is where I'm going to stop today with this background. I want to wait for it to dry before I make any more decisions. Now, if this was exciting for you, this is what I would watch next.